You are listening to the Love and Confidence podcast, episode number 119. Welcome to the Love and Confidence podcast. If you're a woman who wants to feel more irresistible, have more fun, and create deeper and more authentic connections, this podcast is for you. I am your host, certified life coach Lærke Nielsen, and I help you become the best and most confident version of yourself so you can attract the love life you desire. Let's get started. Hey friend, welcome back to the podcast. Last week, the topic was about how to be yourself, how to be authentic in dating. And I ended up concluding that the core reason we are not being ourselves is because we fear judgment or rejection from other people, or in dating is of course from the man that we're dating, and that this is basically because we are not strong in our self-acceptance or self-love, depending on which word resonates the most with you and where you are. Because if you are strong in self-acceptance or self-love, you wouldn't make rejection mean that there's something wrong with you. You would just make it mean that this is not a good fit. You might still be sad and you might still wish that a guy didn't reject you, but you won't take it out on yourself. You won't make it mean that you are not lovable, or torture yourself with thoughts about how you'll never find love again. So, self-love or self-acceptance. For some of you, the word self-love feels like too far a stretch. Maybe you feel so overwhelmed with negative thinking that you can't even imagine going from where you are now to self-love. But then the next step will just be self-acceptance. And in this episode, I will share with you an exercise that I do with some of my clients and that often works really well. And it's of course much better when you get personalized and tailored coaching, but you can still get some mindset shifts even by working on this on your own. So this episode is going to be sort of a self-coaching guidance. So I'm going to teach you a technique that you can use to shift your thoughts, to go from negative self-talk, negative thoughts about you as a partner, and into having more self-acceptance and more self-love. And you can also use this just on yourself as a woman. Doesn't have to be yourself as a partner. It can be anything. It's basically just about how you think about yourself. So you start by writing down 20 reasons that you are undateable, or things about you that makes you feel vulnerable with a man. Things that you would rather he never found out, or where you worry that he's gonna find out, or where you will try to hide it for as long as possible. And this could be some habits that you have, something that you do often or once in a while. It could be the way you look. That's a classical one for especially women. I think maybe also men, to be honest. But we talk a lot about it, and it's a lot in the media, and we're very socialized to believe that our looks are very, very important. And it could also be something in your past, a story in your past, something you did or something you didn't. And I'm going to give you some examples. When we talk about habits or things that you do on a regular or maybe not so regular basis, but something that you feel embarrassed about, it could be simple things as you think that you're being messy, you're wearing night clothes until 4 p.m. on a Sunday, you go to bed without brushing your teeth, you're watching cheesy rom-coms, or you're listening to pop music that you're very embarrassed about, or you're eating peanut butter with a spoon directly from the glass, or you're drinking too much at parties. You might be comfort eating or comfort shopping, or not good at following through on things you decide to do, like going to the gym. Or it could be that you're often late for appointments. Whatever you can think of, things that you do in your daily life on a more or less regular basis and that you feel embarrassed about. Then it could also be something related to your looks. Maybe it's the way your body looks, or maybe it's your face. Areas where you feel either too big or too small, or not the way you would want it to look. Not because you should have something that you don't like about yourself. I really hope you don't, but I know a lot of women do. So this is an example that shows up again and again. There are parts of ourselves that we want to change. There are parts of ourselves that we want to hide. And of course, when it's the face, you can't really hide it so much. But you can still worry what is going to happen the day he sees me without my makeup on, for instance. And so the things about habits and the way we look is a little bit more in the superficial area. For many women, it's not deep trauma, but it is something that can make them worried about what happens when a man gets really close to me and he sees all this. But when we talk about things that could have happened in your past, things that you did or didn't do, or experiences you had, here we can find something that is a little bit more serious and that you want to work on and really change the way you think about and take a look at why does this make you feel vulnerable. And some examples could be, for instance, if you never lived with a partner and you're over a certain age, this might be something that you feel shameful about. You feel there's something wrong with you if this hasn't happened to you. It could be that you decided to cut connection with parts of your family and you're worried, what is a man going to think about me when he discovers that, even if you have a really good reason. It could be that in your past you've been in an abusive relationship and you didn't end it even if you knew you had to. Which of course, this is something I don't want you to ever blame yourself for, and nothing good comes out of that. There's always a good reason why we stay in a relationship. But this could be potentially something you don't like about your past and you would prefer to hide. It could also be that in your past you had a relationship where the guy was cheating on you. And even though he was the cheater, you still could be the one who's left with feeling that there's something wrong with you, that you were not lovable enough, and that it's shameful for you that he cheated on you. Feelings don't always show up in a logical way, right? It could also be that you gave up on something like an education, for instance, or that you were fired from a job in your past and you feel very shameful about that. And then it could also be something in the present moment, like something you feel you're not good at, but that you tell yourself you should be good at. For instance, driving a car, or doing your taxes, or cooking, or organizing a dinner party, and so on. There is no end to the things that we can think about as reasons for why we are not good enough or why we're not dateable. So I want you to just sit down and write 20 things that you feel vulnerable about if a man that you are dating and that you really like were to find out. So that's the first step. And then the next step is you take each of these 20 things and you go through for each of them this line of questions. Number 1. Why does this make me vulnerable with a man? What do I make it mean about myself? And then number 2, can I change this? And number 3, do I want to change it? Because that's of course also a question. If you can't change it, do you want to change it? Or is it just part of who you are? And then number 4, if I want to change it, how do I want to do this and when? And the last question, all the things you cannot change or you do not want to change. If I don't want to or I can't change it, how can I reframe the way I think of it? And the point is to clean up all these negative thoughts about yourself and sort them in 2 piles. The things that you can change or want to change, and the things that you're not going to change, but where you have to change the way you think about it. An easy way to say this, either you change it or you accept it. And if you want to change it, of course, you need to make a plan that feels realistic and then start doing it. But for all the things that you cannot change or that you do not want to change and that you want to reframe instead, you want to take a look at what you answered in the first question. Why does this make me vulnerable with a man? What do I make it mean about myself? So we can take an example here. Let's say that you were fired from a job in the past. You can't change that. It already happened. But it makes you feel vulnerable because you tell yourself that it means you're not competent or skilled enough. And in the context of a relationship, you might believe that this makes you unreliable or not responsible or a risky match. Maybe you even think you're not as good a partner as he expects you to be because he thought you were so professional and perfect and cool in your career. He won't like you when he discovers. He will think less of you. He will be disappointed in you. Then what you can do is go through 4 questions. That is a simple row of questions created by Byron Katie. And Byron Katie, she's an American speaker and author, and I would also call her a self-help spiritual innovator. So if you don't know who she is, you can go and look her up. She has so much wisdom and insight to the human mind. And I just love the power and simplicity of these 4 questions. And by the way, you can use them on so many things in life. So not only changing the way you think about yourself. And these 4 questions, this is a way to inquire yourself on the credibility of your thoughts. Question 1, is it true? And here you can only answer yes or no. So, is it true that he will be disappointed in me and think less of me if he finds out that I was fired from a job? And here you might be tempted to say yes. You think, yeah, it could be true. I know that he already thinks very highly of me. He sees me as a career woman. He knows that I have a really cool job, so he's going to be really disappointed when he realized that I was fired in the past. But then the question 2 is, can you absolutely know that it's true? Can you prove that it's true? Do you think everyone else in this world would agree? Would you be able to prove this in court? And here, of course, often you actually have to say no. You cannot know absolutely that it's true. And then the next question, the 3rd question is, how do you react? What happens when you believe that thought? And believing that someone you're dating will think less of you and be disappointed in you if they discover something about your past, that will of course lead you to want to hide and never share this story. And in this case, it might not be the lack of sharing that hits you the hardest, because it could be a story from many years ago and it's maybe not even relevant to talk about it. It's more the stories you tell yourself about your value as a person. So if we believe we are less worthy and we will be disliked for something that happened in the past, we impose shame on ourselves. We avoid talking about it and anything that is close to it, out of fear that he will discover or ask a question that will have you tell him about it. We judge ourselves and we blame ourselves because of how we think about what it means about us. So hiding and holding back and lots of negative self-talk, feeling inferior and fearing that he will ever find out. This is how you will show up when you believe this thought. And that is the opposite of loving yourself and accepting yourself. So the 4th question is, who would you be without that thought? If you believed that it would have absolutely no consequences whether he knew that you were once fired, you wouldn't even worry about it. It doesn't mean that you would talk about it as the first thing. You just wouldn't have a negative vibe about your past career and you would be relaxed talking about everything related to it. So Byron Katie also has a method to turn around the thought, and you can go and look that up. But what I want to suggest to you here is just to get creative and answer this one question, which is not Byron Katie's question. It's just something that I find very useful. Even if it does feel like it's true, what could be some other truths about the same circumstance? And here, some of the thoughts that could come up are, I am disappointed in myself for that experience. I don't think highly of myself. I think less of myself. He doesn't care about my past. He's more interested in who I am now. I wouldn't be disappointed if it was him. I don't care about his past. I'm more interested in him now. And then the next question you want to ask yourself is, how do I want to think about this moving forward? And this mindset shift is all about being honest with yourself without beating yourself up. For instance, you could think, I was fired for a good reason. I thought I could do the job, but I couldn't. I'm not proud of this, but I learned something from this experience. Or it could be, I was fired and I never thought it was fair, but that's all the more reason to not be there anymore. Or it could be, I did my best and still I was fired. I was not in the right place, but I'm still proud that I tried really hard to do what was expected. And maybe you can even try to find some upsides to having had this experience. Like, having learned from it, understanding better what it means to be fired, maybe being better at supporting others in a similar situation. And maybe you can look back at your past self in that situation and know that you would have done differently today, but back then you did your best based on what you knew, based on the experience you had at the time. And you give yourself some compassion, like if it was a friend who went through it, but without closing your eyes for the growth opportunity that also lies in there. And so now I chose a story about being fired in the past, and maybe it doesn't feel like something you relate to. Maybe you would never even worry about that. But it could be something else, like not having lived with a man ever, even though you're over 50, worrying about what that means. Is he gonna think there's something wrong with her? Why didn't she do that? Why was she never married? And so on. Whatever happened, whatever you have a story, you want to find a way to own it. So you want to walk yourself through those questions and find out, first of all, why does this feel so vulnerable to me? What am I making this mean about myself? And then challenge your thinking and try to find a new way of thinking about it, which is often just about understanding yourself, understanding your motives for doing the way you did in the past, even when we're not proud of it, or even when we think we could have been in a different place, but there were some reasons we made the decisions we made. And of course, for all those different stories that you can have in your past and that you don't feel proud of, is different questions that will help you reframe them and own them. And now I use the example, something that happened in your past, but it could also be one of your little habits that you put into these questions and ask yourself, what am I making that mean about myself? And what do I think he will think of me? Why is it vulnerable for me if he finds out? And then challenge that thought and find out, okay, is this something I want to change? Or do I just want to change the way I see it? Do I just want to see this as one of the things that makes me unique, as a little quirk that I have and that I might not be proud of, but I'm definitely not going to change that either because it's not really a big deal. So this is self-love, being curious, understanding, and compassionate with yourself when you think of something that you feel vulnerable about. Decide if you want to change it, and if you don't want or you can't change it, then challenge the thought with the 4 questions from Byron Katie and ask yourself what are some other truths, and finally decide what do you want to believe about it, what do you want to think about it moving forward. So you can ask yourself, is this all there is to loving yourself? And the answer is no, this is just one approach. This is one tool that you can use to clean up the negative thinking that you might have about yourself, about feeling less lovable or less dateable. But there's of course more to it than what I can share in this short episode. And if you found this to be useful and you want to do more of this work and go deeper and have more personal feedback, then I want to invite you to book a free call so we can talk about what you need and how you can work with me. And there's a link in the show notes. So this is all that I had for you today. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. And don't forget, no matter if you're single or not, you are loved, you are worthy, and you are important in this world. Have a wonderful week. If you like what you're hearing on this podcast and you want to get support from a coach on your love journey, I invite you to book a free consult call with me. You will find the link in the show notes. And also, don't forget to subscribe, and I would love it if you would rate and review this podcast, and then you'll also help other women find it.